Welcome to Linux for the Rest of Us, episode number 35. The show where you don't have to be afraid of Linux. That's what we're here for. If you're afraid of Linux, you probably won't even start watching this show. But if you mustered up enough courage to turn this podcast on and you were originally afraid of Linux, you did the right thing. You came to the right place. This is the right show. Because we like to talk about Linux in layman's terms and give you tips and tricks and all kinds of cool Linux stuff that you can use and get started and get rolling as a beginner. It's great. If you're intermediate or advanced too, our expert who we have on the line offers a lot of awesome stuff. Let me introduce him now as I talk about him as our expert. Even though, Dor, you did classify yourself as an advanced noob, I'm sorry I keep calling you an expert.
No, it's like I said, everything is in perception and relation to one another. At times I do feel kind of proud of what I'm able to do. And then at other times I find myself sweating profusely, going through Google, pounding my fists. I know it's simple.
You seem like the sweating type.
What? Well,
yeah.
Good.
Well, let me introduce you first. I said the expert. That's not your full name.
No.
We're talking about Steve McLaughlin, the Door-to-Door Geek. You guys should know him by now. And that's your name. So just wanted to put that out there.
I have lots of fun with Linux. I actually think of it as a exploration in knowledge, usability, functionality, and it's basically hacking in its purest form, making this device do what I want it to do, how I want it to do it, when I want it to do it, why I want it to do it, and not being held with restraints by a powerful company from the Northwest or some guy from somewhere else. I don't know where he's from.
Yeah. Who's Steve Jobs?
Yeah, I don't know.
He's from California.
I know, but I was thinking Apple was in Georgia, but I'm thinking they can't be in Georgia.
I read Wozniak's, or I listened to the beginning of Wozniak's autobiography. He talked about where he met Steve Jobs. Pretty cool. Listen to Woz. He's such a geek.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say, man, I'm glad. I'm actually envious. I'm actually envious of you for having as much knowledge as you do on Linux, because I like to toy with it. I do a lot of my work on Windows and Mac right now, but if I had the time and I could sit down and really tear it apart, I would like to try to do everything I'm doing on these other machines on Linux, and I think it's possible. So you opened the door to me for that, and I'm really happy that I have this operating system sitting in front of me on a laptop here. I'm running Ubuntu, and it's just rock solid. So thank you is what I was trying to say.
Oh, no problem. And you started out about saying don't be afraid. So I'm going to jump to my last topic I was going to mention for the evening.
Okay.
People talk about, Skynet, beginning of Skynet. Well, I can tell you, it ain't going to be a Windows kernel that's going to be the beginning of Skynet.
How do you mean?
The first computer to gain a awareness of itself will not be running Windows 25 or something.
It'll be running Linux?
It will be a Linux kernel, that I'm pretty sure about, just because of its modularity and its exponential growth and how it's been going.
So we should all use Windows then, you're saying?
No, you should keep your friends close and your enemies closer, I'll say it. There's a nice link on Borepatch, borepatch.blogspot.com.
Uh-huh.
And the title of the posting is How to Beat Watson, the Jeopardy computer.
Oh, I know how to do that.
Go ahead.
Don't speak his language.
Well, easier said than done. Basically, it's a three-pane, multi-pane comic, just kind of thing. But it's real pictures from the show. And the final Jeopardy category is Linux basics. And the answer is, this command formats a hard drive. And Ken answers, what is FSCK space -F space -Y space /dev/HDB1. That's to format a hard drive. The other guy, who means nothing to me, answered the same thing. And then when they get to Watson, he said nothing because by putting his answer in the form of a question, he formatted his own hard drive.
That's so awesome. And then these guys are laughing at him.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. That's pretty clever.
I just thought it was great because in the end, it's just a computer.
Yeah.
You know.
I hate to say it, but that was cute.
Yeah. Well, I figured, we'll start with that whole don't fear it thing. Don't fear the Reaper or the Linux. The first thing I wanted to say was I really am happy with the slow yet constant improvement in the community of Podbuntu, and the stuff that I've been able to put out there has been at least consistent. It's been about one update a week, one update every 5 days, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
The latest update I put out, it's a downloadable script file. If you run it in Linux, you have to go to podbuntu.com. I believe it's the second link down. It is called fprot, how to put fprot on Podbuntu, but it does a little bit more than that. And I'll just say right now, fprot is old. No one mentions fprot anymore, but if you look at most of the antivirus comparatives or AV comparatives, for instance,
yeah,
that vendor is always around the middle of the top 10. Where tools that everybody puts on their customers' computers, it seems like AVG, Microsoft Security, Essentials, and stuff like that, always rates worse than around the midway spot. So I think this is a fairly competent AV. The script is really easy. You just download it, right-click it. Remember, I said anything in Linux you download via email or via a browser is by default not executable.
Yes.
That's a default that you can change. I highly encourage no one to change it.
Security reasons?
Security reasons. It just makes you a touch safer.
Okay.
Just download the file, right-click it, go to Properties, Permissions, Allow Execution, and then just double-click it. I always select out of the next pop-up, Run in Terminal, so I can see what it's doing. It basically connects to the fprot website, downloads the tar zip file, and then it downloads 2 or 3 little files from Podbuntu. Puts a folder on your desktop called Podbuntu Tools, puts a shortcut basically in there, which is actually a .desktop file. Lord, they are easy to create, I found. And then you just double click that. You get a little pop-up window that says, insert your Windows drive, and then press OK. So if you're booting from a live CD and the Windows drive is the native drive in the computer, you just hit OK. If it's via USB or USB to IDE, you plug it up then. A window will pop up with the drive in it. You just close that window, go back and hit OK. The script will scan known mount points in Linux, and it will sense where the Windows drive is, and it will automatically start to run the scan on that drive. Now, one failing I have is I don't have a Windows drive on a USB that I can throw in there for testing.
Okay.
I mimic a Windows drive with a thumb drive by placing certain key files on the root of the thumb drive,
right,
so I can do my test and everything looks like it's working fine. I need some real world testing, but it's really easy. Now, here's one plus to this script. You can install it on any Ubuntu derivative. So you can install that script on Linux Mint, and then on your desktop, you'll have a folder called Podbuntu Tools.
Okay.
And as long as you install, it's called Easy GUI, which I linked to on the post, then you can install it and have it running just like it was on Podbuntu OS.
Sweet.
And I had one thing. I got a message today from Wilbur Bear.
Mm-hmm.
Wilbur Bear. He had a great idea, and I know MindMeld did, in my eyes, a lot of work, which I think for him was only 10 minutes worth of work. I don't want to directly ask anyone to take time out of their day, but if there's anybody out there with any graphical capabilities, let's say, because I can do it, but it would take me hours to do it. He had a great idea. A image of like a circuit board or a motherboard, some kind of circuit board as a desktop background with the Podnutz logo smack dab in the middle of it to hammer home the tech angle to it.
Very cool idea.
And if anybody has any graphics at all they want to contribute, as long as they're not naked chicks, you know, I'm more than happy to put them on there. I ask that you send them in the highest resolution possible. Linux does a very good job of scaling it down if you have a smaller desktop. Scaling it up never quite looks as good. Scaling it down is always better.
Sure, of course.
And I've learned a lot from this process.
What kind of throw us some numbers. What resolutions do you need? Let's get specific.
I knew you were going to say that.
Just so they have the right aspect ratio.
I know.
You know all about aspect ratios, right?
Well, well, here's the thing. The actual ratio doesn't matter. I've been loading this on all kinds of devices, you know, 4x3 screens, 16x9 screens. This is a weird hybrid screen. I don't even know what it is, but like 1280 by 800. It's 16 by 10. I don't know why, but it is. Basically, above 1200 by 800 is a safe number.
Okay,
I'll say that.
Okay,
and I'll say I've learned a lot in this process. A lot of stuff that I kind of do in Windows. For my corporate enterprise business, automating tasks, scripting events, remotely doing things to computers with one click kind of thing. And what I'm doing, I'm very calculating.
No, that you don't want to call yourself calculating, Dor.
Okay, I don't. I'm like tackling one type of script and then I'm moving on to the next. So now I have an AV type script. So now when I go back, I can do another insertion of another AV product simpler.
I see.
But I don't want to just, here's an AV, here's another AV, here's another AV. So I'm going to jump from a top topic. Next, I'm shooting hard on that password blanker. I want to be able to say to the user, same kind of screen, insert your Windows disk, hit OK, you insert it, you hit OK, sense where the Windows drive is. I want to see if there's a way I can pull up a list of usernames from that Windows drive, allow the user to click a username, hit OK, and it will go and blank that password on that drive.
I see.
So then you can log in as that user. Also to enable the account because it might be disabled due to lockout.
I see.
That's the kind of tool I think people can use really well. And what I'm going to do in the meantime, though, because that's going to take a little while, I think, I'm going to highlight already done tools like G parted. I'm going to put them in a easily identifiable place so you can say, here's my disk tools, here's my data recovery tools kind of thing. Because there are plenty of built-in tools with a GUI that works just fine. So that's going to be the goal for this coming week. And if anyone has any input, suggestions, just head over to podbuntu.com, join. Drupal 7, which that site is based off of, has a nice little DM feature where you can direct message other users on the site. So I kind of like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
Yeah. And one thing I found was if I assign people to groups, I can send blanket messages to groups. And the groups,
so awesome.
And the groups are like permission groups. So you're already making someone either a mod of this section and administrator for the whole thing. So it just piggybacks on that group.
So you can have like the art department, the marketing department.
Exactly.
The coding department.
Yep. And the I need nicotine department.
Don't think about that.
I'm not thinking about it.
Just think Linux. Think Linux.
Linux. Well, hey, I was already thinking of ways that I could use Linux to help me not smoke.
Good.
But then that just made me think about smoking, so I stopped it. The next thing I want to talk about real quick after that tirade of tangents, blog.internetnews.com, which I can safely say I have never heard of in my life. But they got a little bit of credibility from this article they did, Pwn to Own. If no one has heard about this, this has happened for a couple years. I mentioned it a couple shows ago. where they take a MacBook Air, a high-end Windows Sony laptop, this year a Google Chrome netbook, an iPhone, and like one or two other devices. And each day, hackers, crackers attempt to maliciously overtake the devices, become administrator on the devices, pwn them. Day 1, you have to play by a certain amount of rules. Day 2, it's a little bit more expanded. Day 3, you can do virtually whatever you want to do.
Okay.
And if you, like, on day 1, pwn the MacBook Air, you get the MacBook Air for free. So it's an event that's got a good amount of attention. And this guy, Sean Michael Kerner, wrote a little thing up. He interviewed someone at a security firm, and one of the questions he asked is, why isn't Pwn to Own also why isn't it more focused also with having Linux, being able to be pwned? With the Chrome netbook, it kind of is, kind of isn't. It's really, you're owning the browser.
Right.
In the Mac, your interface for the first day is the browser, but you're really trying to get to the OS. He had a very, I think, interesting answer. He said, Linux is not an operating system that has widespread use with any one particular distribution, flavor, or configuration. Real quick, like Ubuntu is a distribution. I'm using Podbuntu. It's the same distribution, but it's a slightly different configuration. So there might be slightly different ways of pwning the device. He also says, in general, Linux is still a server-based operating system. People do use it on their desktop, but you can go to Best Buy.
You can't.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you cannot go to Best Buy and buy a Linux with a specific distro on it that everyone uses widespread market share. I butchered that. If we were able to include Linux, we would have even more controversy, and we just don't want to deal with it. So what he's basically saying is it's too broad. If they put up Ubuntu, people would freak out and say, it was too easy, you should have used Fedora.
Right.
Or somebody else would have piped up, you should have used Red Hat. And it would cause a little bit of a screaming match to be quote unquote fair. And in this politically correct universe we now evidently live in, they would have to have a Mac, a Windows, a Chrome, and then like 15 other things over there.
Yeah. Just
to satisfy everyone. And I can understand them not wanting to do that, but I would like it if they would take like the top 2 distributions in download counts, which really there's no accurate counts. DistroWatch has its own download numbers. Here's the reason it's hard to count. I can take Ubuntu, Podbuntu, distribute it. Nobody asks me how many times it gets downloaded, and I have it hosted on a torrent, which means I can't count how many times it's downloaded, and I can burn 50 CDs, walk into the mall and hand them out, and they can't count them either.
What does DistroWatch actually serve distributions out and is able to track them, or do they do an estimation? How do they do it?
They do estimations off of the main server's bandwidth being used for downloads. What DistroWatch really is, it's more of a like the Wall Street Journal to Wall Street. DistroWatch reports on distributions, and it tries to do a very good job, and in most cases I think it does a phenomenal job. A guy I know, Bruce Patterson, hosts the DistroWatch podcast over there, and there's a couple people who contribute a lot of their time to get into distributions and analyze them deeply and give you genuine, honest information on them. This one isn't ready for prime time. This one, I I booted up the live CD 3 times and it failed on me, and they're very honest when something is not quote unquote ready for prime time. And when something is ready for prime time, they highlight its good points, and there's always something bad to point out. So they highlight that as well. I mean, I like it because it seems utterly unbiased. Unbiased. Thank you. Yeah.
His quote, he probably pissed a lot of people off. This guy that, got interviewed on this for as far as Linux not being in the Pwn-owned competition. And they tried, I think with Windows, didn't Walmart start distributing computers with Linux? They had a Linux distribution. It was Linspire, wasn't it? What was it?
No, Linspire was the one that it was basically a pay-for product where its biggest selling point was click and run, which was literal one-click installs for software. The one sold at Walmart was called the Everest PC, and it came with a desktop called GOS, and everybody said it meant Google operating system, which it didn't. The one really truly unique thing I liked about that computer was it was really affordable.
Yes, big time.
The parts were not substandard like some gateway parts or
really?
Something like
they weren't.
They were not, heavily faulty parts. Like with Dell, we have these motherboard capacitor issues.
Mm-hmm.
With gateways, they actually got sued because they were using used parts and calling them new.
Right.
Everyone I know who had one, I mean, it's been 2 years and they're still running fine.
Interesting.
No weird hardware issues. Its one failing was it was not correctly advertised to the consumer. This is not Windows. And if you've ever been to peopleofwalmart.com and looked at them, some of those people need stuff very clearly said to them.
Are you kidding me?
I was going to say spell it out, but that's not enough.
You could tell them that it has Windows on it, a computer with Windows, and they still won't know what you're talking about. That was a tough sell. That was a tough sell. It was worth a try though.
Oh yeah, and honestly, I ran that for over 6 months. There was a couple things I really liked about it. Unlike you, I'm not a Google fanboy, but I will abuse every service they offer just because it works well. The servers aren't down. You don't have to worry about in 3 months it's not going to be there. And everything's tied with each other. So you can easily go from Docs to Gmail to Calendar to everything else.
Right.
It had a desktop called Enlightenment. It's called E17. And it's quite Mac-ish with their dock bar.
Really?
But most of those icons in the dock bar where it said word processor linked to Google Docs.
Oh, really?
And email linked to Gmail.
So you had you have a Google account. People were probably freaking out about that.
Yes, it was very Google-centric. Maps went to Google Maps. I mean, pictures went to Picasa. I mean, everything went to Google seemingly.
And they're like, where's my MapQuest?
Yeah, exactly. MapQuest. And it was a really nice distribution. E17 is not perfect because, for instance, on that little dock at the bottom, you would right-click one of the icons and there would be a remove option. You would think that remove option would remove that one thing from the dock bar.
Yeah.
It removed the whole dock bar.
Oh, really?
And the first time I did it, it took me 20 minutes to figure out how to get it back. So, honestly, if you understood Linux at all, that computer was a steal. But to new users, I did hear it had a very high return rate, something like almost 80%.
Yeah, that's a shame.
So, yeah, it is a shame because, and it was the wrong time, I think, So it didn't make a lot of sense. But he also, I guess, forgot for a couple of years, for like 2 years, every netbook that was sold just about came with Linux on it.
Right.
It was a stripped down and tweaked version of Xandros, which I've never heard anyone actually use. But it's a version.
Yeah. I remember I didn't get the original Asus E like you. I got like the model afterwards, and it came with Xandros. I immediately put Windows XP on it. This was back before this show, but still, I probably would have put a different distro on it now.
Yeah, and the phrase that I'm going to use in air quotes is not something I'm saying, but the popular phrase amongst the Linux users was it was Linux in girly mode, which
Uh,
just which just meant you could do almost nothing to it. All it was a bunch of big
yeah,
icons
yeah, that's what it
that
was.
said music, internet, and that
Spreadsheet.
was right. And I personally hated the interface. I too wiped it, but I put all kinds of stuff.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Couldn't get Arch on it though. But I'm sure that was my fault. Yeah. Okay, the next thing on the top up, I'm gonna follow a little trend here. It's a link on Radian.net, which of course makes me think of Mortal Kombat. I think that was
I think if it's what you have in notes here, it's Raiden's Realm. So it's Raiden.net. Raiden.
right. And of course, now the site's going very slow for me. But the name of the article is The Mysterious Linux Command Line. And it's not a long article. So don't, typically command line stuff is like a small book because it is deep. It is utterly deep. And this guy just gives you a couple tips on how to do some stuff in the command line. And one of these, the very top thing, I actually learned about a couple weeks ago on Linux Basics. And I really like this tip. I actually used it in helping myself to create all these scripts I've been doing for podnutz. Man means manual. For instance, you have the copy command, CP. If you type man space CP, you'll be presented with a scrollable terminal window that tells you about the CP command, the options for the C command, who did it, who created the documentation, stuff like that. It isn't heavy with examples, which I think is one failing I've had with the man command, because I live by example. I got to have examples.
Right.
But if you read it, it typically can get you far enough. And there's a command called man-k. And that -k means keyword. So you can type man-k, or I'm sorry, man space -k space copy, move, shutdown, SSH. I mean, you can type almost anything in there and it will search every single command with a manual page for those keywords, because on in the very bottom of the man for CP, it will say at the bottom keywords.
Uh-huh.
So their example is man-k password. And you can see a whole bunch of commands that have to do with password. And the one that they highlight is PASSWD. PASSWD is the built-in command to change passwords. So, right there, it tells you about that. And there's set PWENT, and it says get password file entry, all kinds of stuff. This is the kind of thing where if you don't know what command to run, but you know what action you want it to do, this is a very nice way of not having to use Google and search through 3 million results.
Yeah, this is really awesome. Hey, I think anything that helps with the command line, take the, the complexity out of it, or just I guess the unknown out of it, I guess you could say, is a great thing to have.
Right. Then if you scroll down, it actually gives you an example of what the man for PASSWD looks like. And it's really nothing complex, the man pages. In my logic, they are a little bit drawn out, but they their job is to educate you. So they want to tell you every aspect of the command. And that's the thing, like in Windows, for instance, there's the ipconfig command,
right,
which a lot of people use. All it can really do is tell you the IP address, DNS, and gateway, the MAC address kind of information. Then you can do a release and a renew and a all and a flush DNS, and that's about it. There might be one or two other things you do, but that's about it. In Linux, there's a if command, ifconfig. Similar-esque, but Lord, you can do anything you want. You can like enable it or even disable it. So no hardware, no software can even use it. Like it's like going into the device manager in window and deleting it just about from that if command. So I can very easily say if config space ETH0, which is the hardwire socket, and then space down, and then nothing will ever be able to use that port. In Windows, there's no way to do it. Even with the hardware switch on the laptops, in a lot of cases, that actually does not shut down the wireless device. That only cuts off Windows' ability to communicate with that wireless device.
I see.
Yeah. I don't know if you know, there was a while back, this was found out, there was a bug in how Wi-Fi cards worked, which means this is OS agnostic. Free public Wi-Fi. If I saw free public Wi-Fi on my Windows device, it would then act like a virus, and then my card would see it, and then my card would keep asking for it. I would go someplace else. Somebody else's Mac computer would see free public Wi-Fi. They would see that on my device, then their device would start doing it. And then somebody else would walk by with a BSD or a Linux laptop and see free public Wi-Fi, and it would propagate to where if you got on a plane, and I did this one time, I got on a plane, I published on my, it was a Windows, wasn't a Palm, but it was a Windows CE device, and I announced myself as free public Wi-Fi, and then I turned the device off. And then right when we were landing, 6 hours later, I turned the device on, and I saw 20 free public Wi-Fis.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And, so even those hardware switches don't really mean that it's actually turned off.
So you gave them all a virus?
Well, it's not a virus. It's viral in the sense of it spreads, it self-replicates, but it never gets past the wireless card.
I see.
It can't get into the operating system. There's nothing it can really do. It's just like a bug in firmware or something on the card.
Very interesting.
The next command, or the next thing we're going to do, relates to the command line again. That's the string we're going to follow for a couple. And this is the @ command. The @ command, I will first say, it does exist in Windows. There's a very well-known escalation attack in Windows using the @ command. I'll just say that. It doesn't work anymore since Service Pack 3 that I know of. But it works there too. And what this command does is it gives you the power with a very little input to automate something later. For instance, I know no matter what, I have to go to bed at 11 o'clock. And it's 5 o'clock. And I'm in the middle of doing work, and I'm going to lose track of time. I can do
never do that. Or
I know. But I could do an @ command saying like echo there's the xterm command that will force a terminal window to pop up, and then I can make it say go to bed, and then do a pipe. A pipe is above enter key. In the Windows world, it's not used. It's like an illusion. It doesn't really exist, but the pipe is above the backslash. I believe it is.
Okay.
I never get the slashes right. It's a little OCD, ADHD for you. But that pipe means pass the output of something to the input of something else. Everything's an input and output, whether it's a keyboard's an input, a screen's an output, a speaker's an output, a mouse is an input. I'm inputting my command to launch a terminal and say go to bed into the @ command. And all it is pipe @ and I just put in the time, 11 p.m. There's no fancy Julian dates you have to worry about or any, complex mathematical formulas. You can literally say like @ now plus 1 day, @ now plus 2 months, @ now plus 1 year, @ Friday, which will be midnight, @ Tuesday, @ 6/1/11 which will also be at midnight, or at 5 p.m. 3/1/11. It's that easy to schedule something via a command line, where in the GUI interface, it would take longer. You have to start up the scheduler.
You're right. It actually would.
Hit new, type what you want it to do, go to the scheduler, click that, click through the calendar, click through the clock, click, 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 and then do set. It will literally take 10 times longer. This is an example of how in the command line you can get it done without even thinking about loading a GUI or without even thinking about it, because this is a kind of command that's so instinctive. Once you type it like 2 or 3 times, you understand the syntax completely.
This is the kind of thing that will catch on, I believe, because people want things. I do anyway. I just want to get things done fast. I'm all about the speed of things. So if this can do it faster than opening up a GUI, and I get used to using this, I would use this.
Well, and to be honest, the same thing could apply. Let's say you're transcoding a video or encoding an audio, which I know you do. You could start it, and it could say it's going to take 3 hours to do, but you want to go to bed. Okay, you can say echo space quote CP for copy, where the file is going to be, what the file is going to be when it's done transcoding, space where you want it to be, quote space pipe space at now plus 5 hours, and then just go to bed. And then when you wake up, the transcode's going to be done and that file copy is going to be done.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing, if you stop and think, everybody sooner or later needs this kind of automation. It's just a question of, do you worry about it, or do you jump through X number of hoops to get the kind of thing done? Where here it's just, I don't want to say commonsensical, because it does take a little bit of thought, a little bit of gray matter to do. But honestly, I think it's the kind of thing that can make someone more efficient and productive.
I agree.
And they also list a couple other commands that relate to the at command. There is, and you can type man space AT and you see the at command and all it can do. There's also ATQ, ATRM batch, at.allow, and at.deny. I have no idea what those last two do, but they sound really interesting.
They sound interesting.
And I didn't have time to look and see what they did.
Okay.
But, this is the kind of thing I highly encourage someone who's used to doing task-based things in other operating systems. Look at this, and I think can be pleasantly surprised at how simple it is in hindsight.
I agree.
Yeah, you don't need, and that's the one thing, tangent again. In Windows, you have to download anything to do anything. Almost nothing except for WordPad comes on the computer, and nobody even uses WordPad. You have to download anything to do anything. In Linux, you have the package manager with, in Ubuntu, 30,000 packages. But the dirty secret is a lot of the things underlying that are really utterly powerful, you don't need to download anything. It's all right there. You just have to know how to access it.
Right.
Not trying to sound cheesy, but that's what I hope to try to do here.
No, it's awesome. I seriously think that any command line stuff that you simplify is a super good thing to go over, because I think that's what a lot of people think about when they think about Linux. The guys that are not in the know, they think about the command line. That's like the scariest thing. So anything you do like this is very cool, and stuff that I even can recognize that I could do. I think it's saying something.
Well, and I think it's just like the typical thing I always say about baby stepping. If you even baby step the command line, and by baby step I mean it takes anybody months and months and months and months to really become good at the command line. If you just baby step it, it will take a while, but it's all about seeing, using, comprehending. It isn't about just shoving everything at everybody. And I really don't like when sites or people do that to me. I just get overwhelmed, and then it just becomes like Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
And I just fall apart, and I just start daydreaming about, giving my kid a shoulder ride or something. Okay. We're going to stick with basically the command line for this next topic, but it's called something different. And this is on IBM.com. And IBM is one of those companies I have utterly, bitter feelings about. But in the end, I will wholeheartedly say they do good stuff. They made Watson. Yeah, it's good for somebody. But they have a nice, like, course, quote unquote, and it's about scripting the Linux desktop part 1 basics. They also have a part 2, which I link to. Now, this quickly gets into the level of code that is complex. But here's the thing. What you do in a script file 99.9999% of the time is something you can also do in the command line. It's just you're putting it in a package, in a reproducible package. And like the very first example they go to and down is they're using Python. And Python is one of those languages, if there's any language, virtually anybody who graduated 6th grade can grasp, it's Python. It will take a little bit of walking through, and there's a good Google online class, they call it, where you're like looking at a camera where Google did a quick in-house like 5-day class on Python. And
Really?
they start at the basics.
I might get into that.
The best thing about Python, I'll say, is mostly everything uses real words. The words make sense. It isn't some weird, acronyms
Right.
or just made up words. The only important thing you got to remember about Python is the tab indentation
Yeah.
means something. Where mostly every place else, it's you do it to make the code easier to read, easier to comprehend kind of thing.
Yes.
Tabs mean this is like a function or a group. And then when you go back, it's like you're out of that group of code.
I see.
And that was something I didn't understand, but to be honest, I always typed my code like that, so my code worked. And then when I found it out, I thought, oh, okay. Because I was wondering, I did like an if statement and there was no end if. Well, I don't know how it knows I'm done.
Right.
Wow, this is smart. But this is really interesting if you're at all interested in doing this kind of thing, making scripts to actually do some good modifications, some hardcore-esque modifications inside of Linux. They really do. If you already know Python, they almost spoon feed it to you, where they give you really good examples of the code and then examples of what the code does. And the part 2 is actually Nautilus scripting. Nautilus is the default file manager explorer, if you will, inside of GNOME-based systems, most GNOME-based systems. I'm a fan of it. And then in this example, they also use Python, but how to do stuff in Nautilus. And if you scroll down a little bit, one of the golden things about Linux, they have a screenshot of a right-click menu. This is the kind of thing I hate and I grit my teeth at when I try to go back and use Windows. When you right-click on Windows, there's only one part you as a dumb end user, because that's what Windows classifies everybody as. There's only one thing you have the access and ability to modify that I know of in that right-click menu, and that is the send to command. You can send it to a custom network share. You can send it to a CD. You can create send tos, which are nothing more than pointers to places. In Nautilus, and I'm sure a billion other file managers, you have the ability to customize scripts. So when you right-click on a folder, that folder name gets passed into this script as a variable.
I see.
So you can have any kind of script. There are scripts to convert video, convert audio, to perform levelating on audio. I mean, anything you can do in a command line, which is virtually anything. You can make a script file, add it to the Nautilus right-click menu, and then whenever you're on a file you want to do this process to, you just right-click and you pick what the script name is, and it's doing it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, this is where it can get overwhelming to users, the amount of customizability. I don't think that's a word either.
It's fine.
Okay.
It communicated to me. I know what you meant.
Good. It can almost be overwhelming, but at the same token, just like a baby step it, it's really friggin' cool.
I know it's overwhelming, but it's power.
Yeah, yes, and I agree. And there are a couple sites out there. If you just search for Nautilus scripts, you can download libraries of scripts. Libraries of scripts do a silly wide range of things, from creating what's called a SSHFS connection, secure script hosting file system. I believe it is. I'm close enough. Where you can right-click a file, say send to this via SSHFS, and it creates an encrypted tunnel that NSA can't see what you're doing, and copy a file up to your server or to a remote VPN or some other thing, anything you can think of. I had a lot of fun downloading scripts at one point in time and just saying add, and then right-clicking, trying it, cool. You know, and just playing around with that. I thought that was really cool. The next thing I wanted to talk up, Zenity, which I've never heard of in my life. And when I was talking about making GUI things in Podbuntu, I mentioned Easy GUI. Easy GUI is a Python library. So in the Python script, you can just reference this message box to pop up, and the Easy GUI knows what the message box is, and it knows how to display it. I never heard of Zenity before. I'm going to have to research it. Even though it's on serverwatch.com, that has a really bad ad before you go to virtually any page. This looked really interesting. This would be a good jumping off point into making GUI enough interfaces for people.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to automate the download and installation of an application for a friend or for someone else on the internet that doesn't really know how to do it, this, I think, might be a really good way to do it. Now, I noticed this is like one of the very few postings I've ever seen where they talk about doing something, making your command line more GUI, yet they give you 0 screenshots or anything of what's going on. So I literally had to go look around for other stuff, and it looks decent. It isn't perfect, but it's definitely good enough. I'm going to have to play with this, and I highly encourage anyone who wants to do scripting and add some GUI-ness to your scripts. This looks really interesting, really cool.
Zenity. Okay.
Okay. Now we're totally changing topics, Steve.
All right.
180 degrees. The one thing I love about Linux, and kind of what that guy said, was in reality, virtually every Linux distribution in reality is a server operating system. Because I always say you can turn a desktop into a server and a server into a desktop. The main difference really being is most server distributions don't have a GUI interface. When you boot it, you have a command line. The desktop versions, when you boot it, you virtually always have a desktop interface. The only other differences are really indistinguishable from new users, which is just stuff like Apache web server is installed and running by default on a server where it's not on a desktop. It's very easy to do on a desktop, and it's very easy to disable on a server. So they really are one and the same beast. And what this next link is, how to install VLC shares. And you know, and I know how much I love VLC.
Yeah, VLC is just clutch.
Yeah, I highly encouraged Lalo when he was doing some of his early video stuff for BetterPCTech.com. Rock on. He asked me, well, I'm doing different kind of encodings. Tell me how this runs on Linux. Because he's a smart guy. He wants to make sure everybody can see this video. and I had both of them worked, but they looked slightly different, and I couldn't really completely identify. And then he said, well, which one looks better? I want to make sure everything works good. And then I opened up VLC and I ran them both, and they looked virtually identical. And I said, look, any user that tells you they have any issue with any video they download from you, just tell them to install VLC. Okay? You don't have to worry about, is it the right transcoding? Is it the right bit rate? Is it the right encapsulation? VLC just handles it.
I'm telling you, that's great advice. When I on my laptop repair videos, that is my troubleshooting solution. What,
Yeah, exactly.
QuickTime bombed on you? Oh yeah, just download this program. It's free. It's an awesome viewer. You can use it for anything else, any other video you want to watch as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing. Whenever anyone tells me anything about anything wouldn't open that's a moving picture,
Yes.
or even audio, just install VLC. Get away from me. This is how to install VLC shares, which is kind of like Samba network shares of sharing files, but they're shares that are, its whole intention is to stream audio and video, multimedia out. But here's the gimmick: how to install VLC shares in Ubuntu and stream videos to Android.
Aha.
Oh. Now, here's the thing. This involves a good amount of commands and configurations, but it is very well documented. It even has syntax highlighting, so you can easily distinguish the commands. You know,
See, let me just stop you for a sec. I could do this. I'm very good at following directions if you give me a step-by-step. And that is how I learned so many things, by following somebody's tutorial that's laid out properly. And then I know how to do that thing. So you're saying that this is like that?
This is very much like that. I was very shocked. And this is that Make Tech Easier, which I got to say, I think they've accomplished their goal. They do a very good job of just keeping it simple. And if you scroll a little bit down, you notice the plugins screen looks a lot like that NAS device that our friend Tech Adventures showed us.
Yes, it actually does.
Very, very, very similar in style. And the one thing that they don't talk about in depth is how you can do this. Their description is how to do it from your home computer to your Android device on the same network, connected Wi-Fi. There is absolutely no reason why you cannot open up a port on your firewall, where if you have a Windows device, I highly encourage you, don't open up a port on your firewall unless you really know what you're doing. Okay. On Linux, I can tell you there's a very simple Python command to start a web server. It's a one-line thing, 3 words, and I type it, and then this is now a web server. And I open up a port on my tool routers, because I have multi-dem routers, and then I can tell anyone who wants a file from me, just go here. And there's a web server, and they click download, and it just works. You can do the same thing, open up those correct ports on your router, and there's no reason why you cannot do this when you're in Uzbekistan and your server is in Georgia.
Oh, good, because I'm going there next week.
Good. Say hi to blah, blah for me. Now, the one thing I don't know about this, and I'm going to have to play with it, and I'm going to play with this, is I'm sure there is a optimal, I don't want to say format for the video, because that's not really the case, an optimal resolution bitrate thing for this, because you and I both know, if I'm doing it to my phone, I don't want the video in high def. The question I don't know yet the answer to is, does VLC intelligently on the fly convert it to a stream friendly resolution bitrate? If it doesn't, all that means is you have to use a tool like Handbrake or WinFF to convert the file to a more friendly format.
Right.
But I'm going to do it just to do it. There's no reason to do it. Just I want to do it because because I think I'm like most of our listeners. I get 99.99999% of the content I consume and care about with any degree from my podcatching client. And it already works on the device, and I already download everything to the device. If I had, let's say, a hacked Google TV or something, or if I actually use my PS3 for anything, I would then do this on my home computer, download my video podcast to that, access it remotely on my phone when I want to, and then access it on my PS3 or my Wii when I want to.
Right.
So this is really cool. I'm going to do it. I'm doing it.
I believe you.
And I will report next week on if I punched anything, but it looks so easy. And the interface, I got to say, on the Android device, that's half the reason I'm doing this.
It's slick.
It's very slick. It looks very professional. And I got to say, VLC, the other thing, really quick about VLC. VLC is utterly open sourced from what I understand. So open source, so GPL, so open and exposed. The Mac desktop app store said, they basically took it out of their app store and said, you cannot offer this in your app store. Which, kind of made me upset.
Why did they say that? Because it's so open?
There was some kind of minuscule violation it did, which other applications do, but they decided to point out VLC and take them down.
Something having to do with H.264?
It wouldn't shock me if it was that, to be honest. I didn't read the details because my blood pressure was a little bit too high.
Okay.
At that time.
Good reason.
Yeah, I know. Even if the guy has whatever, I still want to punch him. Okay, next topic before the blood pressure goes again. I've been finding a lot of good stuff in the last 2 weeks on Linux.com. I will say it's not the easiest site to find what you're looking for, but the RSS feed is very good enough to at least glance through.
Okay.
They had a really good, not as well documented, but a pretty well documented step-by-step on how to install OpenXChange on Debian Linux. If I could NyQuil my entire family for a day, I would definitely do this on a computer just to do it, because I really wouldn't intend on using it because I don't really have a need for it. I'm very satisfied with using my ISP for my website host for some of my email, and then Gmail for the other one.
Right.
I'm interested to do it just to see how well it performs on Android with a connection. I am not going to have time to do that, but I'm going to try to talk someone I know into doing it and then allowing me to have an account on it and connect.
It looks a little complicated.
It is definitely a little bit complicated, and it's only because OpenXChange is the free alternative to Microsoft Exchange.
Yeah.
Now, I give Exchange a lot of flack because it's poo. But I will say what it does is very complex. What it handles is a lot.
Right.
And honestly, what it's responsible for is very time critical, and it has to do a lot of churning and a lot of chugging. OpenXChange, every review I read on it, even from very non-biased people, it gives it a very fair thumbs up. This is good. This works very well. They have really a bunch of different levels. I think it's just open-exchange.com. They have a paid version and stuff like that, and they're definitely trying to make this into a legitimate long-term business. Their whole thing is just like a lot of other people. They offer appliances, which are typically moderate
like
hardware.
Dishwashers?
Right. Dishwasher running Linux. It's a little like single OU server for the rack. I can't even think of the right word, Steve. It's a slim device you put in your rack at your business to host this OpenXChange, and it's like a pre-configured device, which means far less issues, better optimization, and you get a warranty and tech support with this device.
I see. So it is a piece of hardware.
It is a piece of hardware, and the software on it is this Open Exchange, but you can download the version of it for your house. I can't remember what it was exactly called. Hosting edition.
Yeah, there's server edition, advanced server edition, hosting edition.
I think it was the hosting edition was the easiest one to use, which is what they use on the Debian install. And I gotta say, to me, they're doing everything right on their website alone, because they very obviously show it running the multiple clients accessing it, and they very clearly have a buy thing on it, and they very clearly say companies like Novell, Red Hat, Univention, I've never heard of, Parallels, HostPoint, 1&1, who I hate, and Network Solutions all are basically in cahoots with this company. Like Rackspace offers hosted Exchange. There are companies that offer hosted Open Exchange. Same exact kind of thing.
Right.
I think they're doing everything right, and I think this is really going to keep skyrocketing as a product. We're in a couple years, companies will have to make a really hard choice, because I do think the feature sets will be so comparable, so comparable, that's going to be a hard decision to make.
You mean going for Microsoft or this?
Yeah. I honestly believe it's only a matter of time, because, like, I believe people doing stuff out of passion and love, and because they like doing stuff, virtually always make a better product than someone who has to come in wearing certain clothes and, hi boss, how's it going today? Better job than most of those people do.
Okay.
Now we're going to switch to one of my addictions, I'll say.
Nice.
Because that's on
I
my
like
mind.
doors addictions.
I know. This is a link on linuxfordevices.com. Once again, never heard of the site before, but it's cool. They have a Atom E6XX PC. It's claimed to be the world's smallest computer. I know I showed that Cube computer a couple months back, and it's in China, and you really can't buy it, kind of thing. Well, this one's not for sale right now, but it's planning on being and that's the important thing. Knowing's half the battle. But the dimensions of it are 3.3 inches by 2.16 inches by 0.5 inches.
It's like the size of a phone.
That's teeny. That's very teeny.
Where did I see this before? Did we talk about this in the post show last week?
No. One night when you were in TeamSpeak, which I gotta say, TeamSpeak is cool. I wish they used Mumble. I'm a Linux guy. I wish they used Mumble. But Fubar Johnny took it out of his pocket. He can use whatever server he wants to use. That's cool. Fubar Johnny, really good guy. I'll say that.
Yeah, he sent a killer email because we're having Podnutz Daily's 300th episode tomorrow. We'll talk about that later.
Very cool. And he's been around, as far as I can tell, from the beginning of Podnutz too. Now get back to this device real quick. It's running Linux in quotes. I don't know what it's running. All it says is with Linux pre-installed. Well, that means nothing. That's like saying it comes with an engine. What kind of engine? Is it twin turbo? Is it V-twin? I don't know. So it comes pre-installed with Linux, which, if I had to guess, it would be a Debian derivative. One of Debian's main focuses is freedom, capital F, making the product as solid as possible, working with as much products as possible without violating any licenses in like any countries.
Right.
And their second, to me, seemingly goal is to run on toasters if they can do it. They will run on virtually any kind of architecture for a processor that's ever been invented. So I'm going to guess it's running Debian. Now the specs for it is, it's an Intel Atom 1.6 gigahertz processor. That's fair. Not fantastic, but that's pretty fair. 2 gigs of RAM.
Wow, 2 gigs.
And flash expansion internal micro SD slot. So you could get 16 or 32 gigabytes of hard drive space on this thing. Display, it has 1 DVI port on an HDMI connector, which means it only sends video.
Right.
Supports HD 1920 by 1080 resolution. Whew.
Damn.
Sounds good to me. 4 USB ports, and it has internal connector types of. I don't understand how it has
2 PCIe's.
Yeah, it ain't big enough.
I don't understand it either.
I think what it is they're going to sell you like a dock as well, where you just plug this little thing into a dock, and it's going to have extra ports and functionality, because it also says it has 2 PCIe Express, 2 more USB, 2 SATA, 2 Intel HD audio, and a bunch of other stuff. Either way, I just think this is really cool. FTW for the win kind of thing. I honestly just think this is the kind of thing. No one's going to use this. No one's ever going to see this, but it's going to revolutionize the back end of computers.
Yeah, I love that, how that small that thing is. I mean, you could technically have a Skyposaurus about the size of a deck of cards with that thing.
Literally. Man. I hope it's cheap. That's all I gotta say. I'm hoping it's less than $50, $60, $60. I'll say.
I'd say 99.
Oh,
I'm just saying. I don't hope. I think it is though.
Right.
70, maybe 79, 80.
It is a 1.6 gigahertz processor with 2 gigs of RAM, and it's not standard RAM. It isn't like notebook RAM, because the stick of RAM in a notebook is bigger than this.
It's the chips off the RAM.
Right. So it's going to be a little bit more expensive just for that RAM too. So yeah, I can see that being $100. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about real quick. I have no experience in. I'm not even a reader. Okay. I call people on Twitter sometimes readers, because I'm not a quote unquote reader. Writers Rejoice. First look at
Scrivener.
Thank you. Man, I was holding out hoping you were going to say it. Scrivener for Linux. And it basically says Scrivener is a tool for outlining, storyboarding, writing, and editing long-term writing.
Ooh, I might need this for my book.
And it says think books, lengthy reports, movie scripts, and so on. It's been an app on Mac OS X, but there's been a steady stream of users who've been asking the company to produce a Windows and or a Linux version.
Is it free on other OSs, Dor?
Honestly, I do not know.
Okay.
I can give you a perfect example of it. It probably ain't. There's more than a couple apps I've stumbled across in the Android market, for instance, that cost money.
Yeah.
Then if you follow the developer link, it takes you to a website where it's free to download.
Uh-huh.
So it wouldn't shock me if their logic is, if you're on a Mac, you paid X amount for a computer, you're more than willing to pay for software. So let's charge a nominal fee of $20-$40.
Interesting. This is exactly what I need. I wish I would have had this before I started my podcasting book. This is exactly what I need.
Gotcha. Now, it still is not released. It's still only a beta for Linux, that is.
Cool.
But this is the kind of tool I honestly believe it's going to empower Linux to grab onto a whole new group of users. Listening to Klaatu's podcast, GNU World Order, which is one of the best names of a podcast ever. He's been talking a lot about this doc book format, which is really nothing more than like saying HTML, which means you can write doc book in almost anything you want to write it in. And then there are tools that can like one click, quote unquote, which is a couple commands, to export it to HTML with a table of contents, export it to a PDF.
Neat.
with like an automatically generated table of contents.
Wow.
And he's been talking about doing screenplays in it and how you can do screenplays in it. He's not a GUI kind of guy, I'll say that. But for everyone who is a GUI kind of person, this literally might fill that niche, fill that need, and giving you the ability to move to a free open source platform.
All right. This is super badass.
Yeah.
I'd be
It does
liking this.
say-
I like this.
Right. It says when it goes on sale for Windows, it will be $40. Educational license of only $35. It will run on XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7. So this is on their website. And for Windows and Linux, you can download the beta right now.
This is awesome. I'm going to use this.
Okay. It does say the beta will expire March 21st.
Okay.
So I think it just might be cool to look at. And it's the kind of thing I think, I'm mentioning here because I believe it needs to get more publication. I've actually tweeted it like 3 times in the last 2 weeks because I feel like more people need to know about this.
I agree. I'm going to tweet it.
Well, first try it. See how you like it.
Okay.
Because in this kind of thing, I'm easy. I'm a pushover because it looks cool. It looks like it works. I have zero need for it whatsoever.
I'll try it. The biggest problem I'm having with my book is that, you get enough pages written, you have to start to organize them and find out what chapters you need to update and what sections are weak and where it's exactly what I need, basically.
Right, yeah. That was one thing Klaatu said was in writing in general, one of the biggest problems become I'm not saying the right word. Compartmentalizing content and then easily reorganizing it. His example is you write a screenplay for a movie and then they decide, well, let's take the very ending of the movie and put it at the very beginning of the movie, which they do kind of frequently. You watch a movie, you start in this scene, you have no idea what's going on, stuff happens, people die, blah, 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 and then they go 6 months ago, and then they start the movie kind of thing.
Right.
He said that's one of the real needs of virtually any kind of writer is the ability
to shuffle.
Quickly shuffle around, reorganize. And with the sidebar on I see on this app, it might be really easy to just drag and drop sections around, but also you can tag things to where you can say, the title of this chapter is audio tuning, but then you could have tags that say Audacity, Levelator, da 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 da. And then if well, I'm going to change this, I'm not going to use that, I'm going to use this, you could just search for the meta content and know exactly where you need to make your changes.
And look at the cool sections like to do, first draft, to do that are written on everything.
Yeah, that was the other thing he mentioned was like the workflow is very key into a good production environment.
I really like that. That is a cool one, Dor. Thumbs up.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I got a little bit giddy because literally an hour after I found it, I think it was Celeb Faults. It might have been Celeb Faults. Asked me about, do I know any good ebook creator applications? Because he wants to do a Linux ebook about how to get off the ground kind of stuff. And boy, do I. Yes, I do. I know exactly what application you can use. And I sent it to him. And he then in turn sent me back a good ebook reader for my Android.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, but I don't need it.
He's all about the Android. Caleb, for those of you who don't know, Caleb has wrote the Android App Addicts app for the show. And you could actually get it in the Android market. Just search for Android App Addicts. Caleb's also now a newly found administrator in the Podnutz forums, and he's been offering immense help to us. I appreciate that, Caleb. Publicly, we should all be happy. We should all, give you props for that. And so thank you for all the help you're doing with that.
Yeah, he is definitely a proactive guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't sit around and wait for stuff to happen. He's a doer kind of thing.
Yes.
And I'll say, if you're a fan of categories, he makes a very nice categories application in the Android market to help you play categories. it's only like 89 cents or something.
It's to roll the. It's the if you lose that giant letter dice,
Right.
You could use his app or just use his app for fun.
Yeah, it's not honestly one of those things. If you really, really just enjoy the game, you can just be waiting in a doctor's office kind of thing.
Oh,
And
you can actually play the game from his app? I didn't know that.
well, no, you can. He said like mentally play the game, so then when you go home, you can beat the crap out of your family.
This isn't Scrabble, all right? This is my family. Only beats the crap out of me in Scrabble. I'm good at the other games. I'll dominate categories. Balderdash especially is my specialty.
Right, and just a quick mention here, Steve, at the end of the show, at GTK Atlantic, talking about games.
Yeah, the Monopoly game.
It's a Monopoly game, and I'll say this. It's not flashy. It's not blingy. It's an older game, which just means right now, it's not really popular, I will say. But if you and someone you know thrive on Monopoly, you could very simply, have them install this application. You can even install it on Windows, but you have to use an application called Ubuntu Portable Remix.
I'm on it now. No one ever plays. There's no users and no servers. So you can create your own, though, right?
Yeah, you can create your own.
I tried playing one time. There was 2 people in there, and they wouldn't let me play with them. And every other time I try to play, there's nobody there. So we should get definitely a podnutz game going on.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. I was thinking about, now I'm going to mention another game really quick.
Did you play this first of all? Have you played it? No, that's what I thought. That's what I thought, Dor.
You didn't let me finish.
I could tell.
I started a game up by myself, and I looked at it and did some stuff. But okay, I was honestly thinking about the same thing before about doing a podnutz gaming thing. So I looked at this really cool game, Sauerbraten.
Sounds German.
I know. Cube 2 Sauerbraten. If you just Google search that, you'll go to sauerbraten.org.
How the hell do you spell Sauerbraten? S-O-U-R? S-A-U-R?
S-A-U-E-R-B-R-A-T-E-N. I didn't say it was easy, Steve. But this is a truly cross-platform game. Here's one of my rules. If we do have a podnutz game kind of thing, it has to be cross-platform to some degree. Mm-hmm. It has to be. Mm-hmm. This is truly cross-platform. This looks really frigging good. Okay, really good. On my 6-year-old Dell M1210 XPS, this thing ran like butter.
You mean the XPOS?
Thank you. But I'll say I quickly discovered I cannot play this game without a gamepad, and I suck. So I don't want this to be the podnutz gaming thing. I'd much rather go for GTK Atlantic. I'll say this: honestly, Steve, if you want to play a game, hypothetically, send out. I don't want to say a tweet because I know you don't like sending out tweets for that kind of thing, but put a ding out there.
I will. No, hey, last time I sent out a tweet from Monopoly, I got 1 person, and that was it.
Well, that's the thing. Anything with social media, you can't do it once.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to do it in a week, do it in a week, do it in a week, do it. And in a matter of a month or so, when you do it, you'll have like 5 people there ready to play.
I'll tell you what I want. I'll tweet this out. I think it would be great if somebody created a game, a podnutz game. Not a game that all podnutz guys can play. I'm talking about a podnutz themed game with main characters. I don't even know what you would do in the game, but wouldn't that be neat? Mm-hmm. If anybody wants to make a podnutz game, talk to me. Let's make a podnutz game, a multiplayer podnutz game. Yeah. This is a great idea.
You could shoot virus and figure out puzzles of malware.
Right. You could tell Steve D to get a new headset.
Yes, that would be one of the missions.
You have to pay Chris like exorbitant amounts of money to get past his gate or something like that.
Mm-hmm, exactly. That'd work. And with Matt Rainey, you have to distract him with a Apple device. So you can pass him.
This is so great. Okay, yeah, we got to do this. This is definitely I'm putting this one on the list.
Okay, well then next week I gotta come up with some game creation things.
All right, cool. I love this. All right, man. Should I read some emails here? We got 3.
Oh, I forgot. Yes.
Okay, Joe says, hey guys, I'm sure you get this all the time, but I just wanted to say thank you for Linux for the rest of us. I have learned more about Ubuntu from this show than the past year of poking around the net. Fortunately, I've been able to show my support by linking my Newegg account to your site whenever I purchase for my company, usually once or twice a week. Joe, first of all, let me just say that's super awesome. Thank you for that. I do notice the contributions going through that. If anybody else wants to support the show and they shop on Newegg, take out your Newegg link and just put podnutz.com/Newegg in place of it. Podnutz.com.
Well, no, I mean,
what?
That's not even a thing. Podnutz.com/Newegg, podnutz.com/Amazon, podnutz.com/eBay. You don't pay a dime more for anything.
Exactly.
You support the show.
You support the show, and it takes you right to the site. Joe also says, I also just finished purchasing Lalo's Better PC Tech videos based solely on the recommendation that you and Dor have made in the past shows. Keep up the great work. If you ever need a guest on the show who has been in the field 20-plus years, feel free to ask. Take care, Joe. Joe, and I answered him, and I said, come on Podnutz Daily. You know where to sign up. Podnutz.com/guests. So that's the first place to start if you guys want to be on a Podnutz show. Hit up Daily. We like new guys on Daily.
Yep.
Thank you for that, Joe.
Yeah, because that's the thing with Podnutz Daily. You don't have to know how to get rid of 300,000 viruses or Trojan to be on the show. All you have to know is something, how to get stuff working, or how to market, or how to advertise. Anything relating to computers. Even if you're a Linux guy, you can talk about how you fix laptops.
Yeah.
Or
computer repair related. Just give some tips. That's all we ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and don't be ashamed if half the stuff you're going to mention has been mentioned in the previous 299 shows.
Repetition is key.
Repetition is important because there are plenty of times I've said stuff or somebody else has said stuff and it didn't sink into somebody. You know what I mean? You got to pound some stuff into them. Like William Tidwell mentioned WSUS offline updater. It's been mentioned at least a half a dozen times, but he got really good positive feedback for mentioning it because it was like, finally it sunk through and now I understand what the tool does and what it is.
Yeah. Plus people miss shows and so therefore need to watch. And if they watch this new show and they'll get the data. Yep. All right, Kevin says, greetings. First, I would like to thank you for your great podcast. Secondly, I have a question about moving from Mac OS 10 to Podbuntu. Cool. In order for this migration to take place, a few things need to be cleared up. It would be so nice to drop iTunes and the iPod Nano. I prefer to keep the 2 times speed for my podcast. What could do this so I didn't have to use my Nexus One for audio needs? Google and other websites have my photo, video needs met. It's the audio thing that's my hang-up. Thanks for your time. Good night. That's from Kevin, who's Kaizen 108, who also got recognized on Android Buffet, too, for listening to that show. Yeah, two-speed podcasts. Any ideas, Dor?
Well, I'm guessing what he means is the playback in iTunes. When you're sitting at your desktop, you can increase the speed.
Yes, that's what he means.
Well, I'll give you one guess, Steve, what the answer is.
Dog catcher.
No, on his desktop.
I forget the name of it. Podbuntu?
VLC.
Really?
VLC can do anything. You can increase the speed of audio playback in VLC with a command keystroke, which I believe is shift right to speed up, shift left to slow down.
Awesome.
You can do anything in VLC.
Really? Oh, super awesome. There's so many things I want to speed up.
Yep.
Okay. See, I love this show. I learn things.
Yeah, now on my Android device, I don't know of any media player in existence that can speed it up.
Okay. That's another
Now, I know. Now, what I was honestly thinking about doing, because I'm like Jonathan Nadeau, he subscribes to 62 podcasts. I'm like above 50. I was tempted to make Dog Catcher subscribe basically to my home server as a feed, and then have my home server subscribe to everything else, download, and somehow retranscode the audio into a faster speed, because I can't find a player that does it on my Android.
That's a shame.
I know.
Good luck with that. That sounds complex.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if anybody can do it, Dor, I bet you can do it.
Well, then I could do like an @ command.
Jay says, hey guys, I'm just finishing up playing catch up with all your shows and feeling good about all your content. I started using Ubuntu in the 8 series, but it's been slow going as I wean myself away from Windows, Windoze, as he puts it. I have 3 desktop PCs, 1 Windows, 1 Ubuntu, and 1 film editor, Windows XP. I recently downloaded Linux Mint, and you have me real excited about installing it. My question is, recently married, and I find my home network exceeding my router's ability. A tech friend at work has me thinking I need to create/install a home network server. With everything I'm hearing in Linux, I'm thinking I'd rather try and do something like this in Linux, not Windows. My network requirements now include 2 wireless laptops, 2 iPhones, a Roku, rather do wired, plus 2 additional desktops, 1 each of my wife and sons, total of 3 Windows systems, XP Vista and Windows 7, plus the before-mentioned Ubuntu, soon-to-be Linux Mint. Really appreciate any and all tips you could throw at me. Thanks very much, as your podcast makes great listening in commuter traffic. I did download an ebook from your link provided, the GNU/Linux Advanced Administration. Thank you, from Jay. P.S. Really appreciate you archiving all your past shows and your links from your web pages. Can't thank you enough. Well, thank you for the email, Jay. I'm glad you're enjoying the show.
Yep. And I gotta say, there is no right answer to this. I'll say there's a Franklin fix and there's the Door Geek fix. The Franklin fix is a server. You basically get any desktop, and then you have to have enough NICs in that desktop to support your need. Looking on podnutz.com/Newegg, the cheapest NIC I could find with 2 ports in it was like $160. So I'm highly encouraging against that. That is too much money in my book to spend on something. What I would suggest is there's really 2 options you can do. You can either daisy chain routers, which simply means it goes from the internet to the modem to the WAN of a router, and then you have 4 LAN ports. One of those LAN ports goes out and into the WAN of another router. So in a sense, you're taking, you then have 7 LAN ports because one of them is taken to go to the other WAN. So then you have 7. Now, if you need more ports, you then daisy chain again from the LAN port of one of the routers to the WAN of another router. Then you have 10 ports.
And 3 networks.
Well, no. If you set the further down routers into bridged mode and turn off the DHCP service in the router, you will have 1 network. And you can very easily browse back and forth all over the network.
Sweetness.
The other cheaper way to do it is to set up a wireless bridge. Now, a lot of people believe you got to buy multi-$100 devices to do wireless bridges. Okay? You do not. Virtually every router I've seen worth its weight in salt, more than $20, will support WDS. They typically call it WDS because nobody knows what WDS stands for. It stands for Wireless Distributed System, maybe.
Okay.
What it does is it inverts what your wireless does in the router. So you have your wireless router by your modem, then you have this other wireless router where you turn on WDS. It then turns the wireless antenna from a outgoing access point to a incoming network adapter. And then you have to point to the other wireless device via MAC address, SSID, is there security, and what is the password? And then all of your WAN ports, all of your LAN ports in that router become hardwired connections.
Yeah.
Because again, you turn off DHCP on that, so you're on the same network.
You know, but I tried setting up a wireless bridge with I guess it was a crappy router. It was a Netgear, and I couldn't use WPA. I had to kill my security.
Right. Well, I will say it has been mentioned to me in the past. When you cross different hardware makes and models, you have issues. I didn't have that, but the device I was using was a Soho level router. I keep wanting to say Buffalo.
Okay. Well, and you could also do it with WDS. Is that the name of that routing hacking firmware thing?
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I was going to say. The best way to do it in my eyes, Linksys WRT54GL.
Oh, the L.
You've got to make sure you get the L at the end. The L stands for Linux. you can install DDWRT,
A TDW.
which is, yeah, or Tomato or OpenWrt, but I like DDWRT, where I've never had an issue connecting to anything with a wireless bridge with that.
Sweet. Or you could buy an Airport Express like I did. So
Honestly, it comes down to money versus convenience. The Airport Express is a lot of money, but and I know
it's rock solid.
It's rock solid. And you plug it up, you go through a very simple interface with like 3 things to fill out, and you're done. And it just works.
Streams Netflix pretty fast.
The only downside I've ever heard about that device is like HP. A guy I know had an HP printer. Maybe it was Timster, and said this device will not work with that device. HP said we don't support it. What do you mean? It's just a wireless routing thing. No, it won't work.
You know why? Because maybe they ran out of room on their driver disks for the software for that.
Exactly.
Because they can only fit 700 megs of drivers and crap on the disk, and there was no more room.
Right, and that was just for 2 printers. Now, the last bit of thing I'd have to add to this is no matter which way you go, I would highly encourage still using a Linux computer, using like a untangled box. And the untangled box would be, there's the internet, the modem, and the router. It would be in between the modem and the first router. What Untangled does, it has a very nice QoS interface, quality of service interface, where you can prioritize packets to where you can say, I'm going to do Podnutz Daily tomorrow. I need my Skype prioritized. I want Facebook diminished. I want YouTube pushed down in priority. I want all this other stuff pushed down. I need my Skype to be up there. And I also believe you can set up schedules for QoS. So hypothetically, the Roku, well, I know at 9 o'clock on Saturday nights, she likes streaming, I don't know, something. You can set a schedule to say, okay, 10 minutes before that, set the QoS to prioritize the Roku device, because you can also QoS based upon IP address. You can say, okay, anything coming from this IP, give it more bandwidth. And then everything else you can lower. With that much stuff on your network, your internal network will have plenty of bandwidth to do whatever it wants to do, okay? Even if you're not on gigabit, you're going to have plenty of bandwidth to do 99% of the stuff you want to do. If you copy multi-gig files, it's going to take a while, okay? So what? The only reason to have an industrial grade server or switch is to do this kind of bandwidth shaping. Untangled does it. It's free, and you only need 2 NICs, one going to the modem, one going to the router. So, and Hack5 did a great show on it. HAK5. Just search HAK5 space Untangled. It's a 2-parter. They will tell you virtually everything you need to know about that distribution and how to install it and how to configure it.
Sweet. Sounds pretty cool.
And that's one of the most favorite shows from our friend, the Techie Geek.
Of course, we have to mention him.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dor. Hope that answered your question, or the emailer's question. If anybody else wants to email us, send us an email at mail@podnutz.com, or you could send a mail to Dor directly. It's up to you. Or you could call 7076-PODNUT and leave us a voicemail. I just want to make a quick announcement. We're doing episode 300 of Podnutz Daily tomorrow. It's going to be exciting. We're going to have a bunch of people on. We're going to have a ton of voicemails of I haven't even listened to them all yet, of cool things that you guys have gotten out of the show and different topics. So it's going to be like a special episode, like a Christmas special along those lines. It should be pretty fun. All right, Dor, what do you want to end off on, and where can people find you?
If they don't know where to find me, try harder next time. Support Lalo Nunez. He honestly does everything he can to support this community and even this show. Go to betterpctech.com. Encourage everyone who wants to become a tech or even thinks they know everything about being a tech, because we all know one of them. Tell them to go to betterpctech.com to complete their education.
Very cool. I second the motion. Thank you, Dor. Thanks, everybody, for watching, listening, streaming. That's going to be it for Linux for the rest of us for this week, and we'll see you next time.